Hi everyone. Today we'll be learning about managing your spending using a spending log and also writing checks and paying bills. If you're new here, my name's Kathy and I teach math and financial literacy. If you have a copy of the guided notes for this lesson, you can fill them out as we go through the slides. If not, that's okay. You can find a link down in the description or you can just listen along. So what is a spending log? A spending log is a tool that will help you track your spending throughout a set period of time. And why would you even want one of these? Well, let's take a look at a couple of reasons that this can be really helpful. The first is that it can help make sure that you manage your money and ensure that you know where every dollar is being spent. The reason why that's helpful is because if you're following a budget, you know that in order to avoid going into debt, you need to spend less than you earn. So tracking each one of your expenses can help you identify places where you're overspending or where you could afford to spend a little bit more. They can also help you visualize how much you're spending on your wants versus your needs. So again, if you might be overspending or underspending in one of those categories, this can help you identify those places. And then the last benefit is that keeping a spending log and keeping track of all your transactions can help you spot errors in your bank statement. So when you take a look at your bank statement at the end of the month and something doesn't look quite right, you have a record to go back to be able to see if there might be an error or something wrong on your statement. So before we jump into an example of looking at an actual spending log, I want to take one moment and just make sure that we all understand the difference between a want and a need. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. I'm going to pause for a moment and I want you to decide if you think each of the following is a want or a need, and then we're going to talk about it. So the first one that I want you to think about is rent. Rent for an apartment. I'll give you a moment to think if you think that would be a want or a need. Okay, so I would identify that as a need, having a roof over your head. Maybe you have a different house to live in, but generally speaking, if you are paying rent, that is probably a need. All right, next one, groceries. What do you think about that one? Okay, I would identify groceries as being another need, having food to eat each week. That's a pretty basic necessity, so I would put that in the needs category. All right, next one, dining out at a restaurant. Okay, I would put that in the wants category. Groceries from the last example are definitely a need, but when you talk about dining out at a restaurant, that would be more of a want. Okay, and then the last one, I'm going to give you a tricky one. What about clothing? Think about that for a second, whether you think clothing would be a want or a need. Okay, I actually think that's a little bit of a trick question because it lacks some context. So clothing is obviously a need. You need to have clothes, but the type of clothing or the amount of clothing could be where that could change from a want or a need. Obviously, you have to have your basic necessities, but luxury clothing or an excessive amount of clothing would end up falling in the wants category. So that one we'll have to just take a look at individually for that. Okay, we're going to switch over to an example of a spending log and record some transactions. Okay, so here is our example. It says Aurora has budgeted $700 for her expenses this month. So far, she has made one purchase and paid two bills. Her purchase was at the mall on the 1st. She bought a shirt for $15.98 and paid with cash. She paid her rent on the 1st using a check. Her rent is $560 and the check was made out to Seaview Apartments. And then the last one, her second bill was paid on the 2nd for the electricity in her apartment. It was $45.12 and came in the mail. She completed the bill stub using her debit card. She sent it back to Oceanside Electric using the following account number. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I have a spending log, a very short one. We are going to record each of these transactions, and then we're also going to write the check for her rent, and we are going to fill out the stub for paying her electric bill. Okay. Her first transaction says was at the mall on the 1st. She bought a shirt for $15.98 and paid with cash. Okay, so I am going to put... It didn't give a month here, so I'm just going to put the date was on the 1st. The description, we're just going to say shirt. That's all the information we're given. It said she paid with cash. So I'm put a little check mark there. And we were not given any context here. It says she just bought a shirt at the mall. I'm going to call that a want because it does not say anything about this being like a needed shirt for a job or anything like that. So I'm just going to call that a want. And the amount was $15.98. All right, the last column says remaining budget. Well, in order to do the remaining budget, we need to know what she started with. It says that she started with $700, $700 budget for her expenses. So her starting budget here is going to be $700. And we are going to subtract out her shirt. Her shirt was $15.98, which means her remaining budget is going to be $684.02. Okay, next one, we have her rent. It says she wrote a check. Her rent is $560 and it was to Seaview Apartments. So I'm going to say this was also on the first and this was her rent. She wrote a check for that one. And we just talked about rent being a need. I'm going to check need for that. 600. Oh, wait, no, it was 560. 0 cents. So when we subtract that out of her remaining budget, that will leave us with $124.02. Okay, and then last one, it says she paid her electric bill on the 2nd for $45.12. So let's see, I'm going to move this up a bit. On the 2nd, her electric bill. And it said that she used her debit card. That would be a need. And it was $45.12. And if we subtract that from $124.02, that leaves her with $78.90. Okay, so $78.90 would be what she has remaining in her budget for, I think it said for the month. So we're done with that. The last two things we're going to look at is a quick practice on how to write a check and fill out a bill stub. Okay. So her check, I have a empty check here. It has her contact information at the top and we just need to fill this out. So the current date is going to go right here. I'm going to let you go ahead and fill that out with the current date. The 20 there is to put the front of the year. So if it was May 5th, you'd put May 5th, 2020, whatever. And then pay to the order of. This is who we're paying the check to. It says that her check is to be made out to Seaview Apartments. And we are going to put in the amount. It was $560. Okay, this line that is underneath right here is for us to write out the amount in words. And this is just a way to make sure that nobody can go in and change the amount. Like they couldn't go in and change that 6 into an 8 or something like that. So we're going to spell out $560.00. So I'm going to write $560. And for the cents, you can just make a little fraction like that, 0 out of 100 cents. And then we draw a little line at the end just so nobody else could add anything additional to that line. The memo right here, that is for you to write what the check is for. If you have a lot of checks that you're paying, you might need to put a little note there so you remember what this is for. I'm just going to put in rent, since that's what this check is for. And then last, this little line right here is where you're going to sign her name. I'm just going to put her initials here because I'm not going to sign her name for her. But, if you were writing out a check, that's where you would put your signature. Okay, so that is a quick reminder on how to write a check. And then the last thing we're going to do here is fill out her bill stub. So when you get a bill in the mail, You can pay bills online. If you pay it online, you wouldn't need this little stub here. But if you're going to pay it through the mail, this piece of paper will come with your bill, and you tear it off and you fill out the information, and then you send it back and they will charge your card. You can also fill out these little stubs for recurring payments. So they can take out the amount every month. And if you do pay your bill online, they're going to ask for this exact same information. So it's good practice to just identify this information and be able to write it down. All right. So her card number, it's on the front of your guided notes if you have them right here, this long piece of those long numbers there. Let's go ahead and fill that in. So it was 0000 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9000. The expiration date on the card was August of 2032. The account number they gave us right here. So let's put that in there. It was 453-68594. And the amount was $45.12. And then again, you would put your signature here. If you were doing this, I'm just going to fill in her initials just to hold the spot there. And then this part right here, you would put today's date. Okay, this brings me to the end of the lesson. I hope this helped your understanding of tracking your spending and writing checks and paying bills in order to help you follow a good budget. Again, if you would like the materials for this lesson, you can find the link down in the description. Thanks for watching.